do this review of the Odyssey as the lighting suddenly goes. Okay, this is Calicat the Calicatster, and this is a review of Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey. Created the Tenet movie and Interstellar, Inception, and Oppenheimer. What are these big epic tentpole movies? Knowing how Oscar does their Oscar thing, though, they didn't release this movie in September or December, or closer to November, December, where the Oscar people will remember it. So yeah, just they didn't do that. They released it in July. Tentpole summer blockbuster movie already. Apparently half of the entire cast of former cast of SAP Productions has all seen it. So everybody all over the country, over relatives have seen it. Yes. It's tea. To get it out of the way right away, there's always hater trolls on the internet who haven't seen a movie and suddenly berate it for having weird casting choices. But I was told, Hollywood does that because Hollywood orders them to do it. So, weird casting choice. In this case, though, because Homer's 3,000-year-old story is a fiction story in an age of magic, says at the beginning, something like that. And I have seen some of the other reviews. I've seen a little bit of, I've seen most of the Red Letter Media reviews, so it's kind of spoilered a little bit. But they didn't spoiler it too bad. I've seen the Nostalgia Critics half review of it, and what he thought of it, and some of the Stone Gremlins, the same people. One of the same, no association. Packed house, Sunday viewing, 12:20 show. It wasn't the IMAX theater, but we couldn't get to the IMAX theater, so it's the D-Box 70mm theater. It's kind of THX back in the day, which is fine. I've only seen a few movies in IMAX. Yes. One of the Star Wars prequels, it was the second one. The Star Wars thing. Avatar, which was a mistake because it was in 3D back in the day. Much other stuff. Saw it later in 2D. So the controversy is stupid, as usual. The actors that were in it tried their best with IMAX cameras. It was pointed out. I will name the source. On Red Letter Media, they had footage from the film, from the trailers, and from some of the interviews. They're able to do that. They're able to put film footage in their videos. Apparently, they have a lawyer guy. So they have a lawyer, and they have an editor, and they both say, okay, you can use so much of the film footage in the background in your movie, in your review, because you have permission, because you're kind of famous and you have a lawyer. And I don't. So that's why there's no film footage. They would immediately flag it if I had footage from this movie, the Universal movie. You'd immediately flag it. The controversy is dumb because if you're not familiar with the Odyssey story, you don't know who appears in it. They're freaking out about Nepenthe Netumba being Helen, but in the movie, if you have no frame of reference, she's just a lady named Helen. So I mean, I knew it was supposed to be, but it's like, who's to say what she looked like in a fictional story from 3,000 years ago? Why couldn't she? I mean, the Mediterranean. I mean, that she could conceivably be from Egypt or somewhere like that, Libya or something like that. Even Ethiopia. Sure, why not? It's fine. It doesn't matter. Half the Greeks are probably from back then. Who knows? There's no. I mean, people would looked back on history and painted it differently, and put themselves in their image after the fact, paintings and stuff. Yeah. And, later on, the Romans came by, the Greco-Romans, and they blended in, and they put their own kind of spin on it. The Romans were very colorful, actually, it turns out. It's just that the sun bleached everything. I mean, there's some nitpicks here and there, but it's an epic poem, Iliad and the Odyssey. The ship of Odysseus, that's where that comes from. The Trojan horse, that's where that comes from. Or a Trojan horse term, that's where that comes from. The Odyssey. You have, yeah. So, so you're basically okay. Yeah, they're also complaining that there weren't any Greeks in your movie about the Greeks. But how many Greek actors are there in Hollywood that are good and that have? I think of a few. And who would they? Yeah, I mean, who would they get? I mean, sure, you could find like Steve Buscemi or something, pull him out. But other than, but they don't have much of a choice. It's like when they tried to do an authentic period piece movie about China. And they don't have enough of those Chinese people in Hollywood that are good actors. They're just in Hollywood. Or there's so they're all, let's get some Japanese ones. We have more of those. So they just play the Chinese actors. Or vice versa. Or there was what was it called, the Joy Luck Club and the other Mulan live action movie. They had trouble finding people. But let's not go into that. It doesn't matter that they're not. It's Christopher Nolan's cast that he usually goes out like a theater troupe and puts in a movie. We got Hathaway and DiCaprio and Elliot Page and from Juno. That's the same person from Juno. And I mean, in Shakespeare's time, there was nothing wrong with casting everyone as that was in the 1600s. That was different. But yeah, so that's not an issue in the movie. These two characters they're complaining the most about have at most 6 minutes screen time in a roughly 2 hours and 53-minute movie, roughly almost 3 hours. And it goes by rather quickly, not quickly. Similar vein to those Lord of the Rings movies. It goes by quickly. There's action going on. Your basic epic Hollywood formula thing, as Dan, the nephew, pointed out. Well, at least they don't all have British accents like when they tried to do an epic movie back in the 50s or 60s. They all had British accents. And they're like Romans or something. Well, yeah. It's the Greeks. Yeah, they're complaining, oh, this ship isn't quite accurate, or the uniforms. No, they're not, but then again, the way the rigging works in the ship is more modernized because they had to build a boat to be able to. So they built a boat, and they had slightly more Roman period and later Roman period of rigging on the prop boat they built. But so I mean, if the movie was being written as though it was written later, like Minions and Monsters, where they had combined elements of the 20s and 30s, 40s, and 50s, this one, you could just say, okay, this is being done later on, like 1,000 years after the Odysseus story, by a group of Romans. There you go. Then they're just like, oh, let's just do the story of Odysseus. That'll be cool. Okay, so they got a troupe together, a theater troupe, to do a story of Odysseus. And it's 1,000 years after Odysseus, the story even happened. That's fine. But that isn't what happened. Nolan's period piece is fantasy, and that's perfectly fine. Your plot of your movie is that. Spoilers, I guess, for the Odyssey. Spoilers. Also, spoilers are that I didn't read this in high school. I read Oedipus. This is a different guy. I read Plato's Atlantis and that kind of thing, and Oedipus, the other guy. I read Othello in college. They kept having us do Othello in Shakespeare class, like 3 different times. And Merchant of Venice. I wanted to do Midsummer Night's Dream. I was like, no, we're going to do Othello. Eventually, in San Jose State, Midsummer Night's Dream got to be in there. I got to hold the wall up in the scene of the wall. He looks through the crack in the wall. That was the wall. Hold up the wall. Okay. I wanted to play this guy. Anyway, now on to the next thing. So DiCaprio. It's not convincing as a Greek, but that's fine. It's perfectly fine. I understand IMAX cameras are very loud, and they had to ADR everything, and they last about 2 minutes, 3 minutes of film. It's a 3-second camera. So at least that's what they said on the Red Letter Media thing and on the interview things. Confirmed that actually happened. I was not on the set, obviously. I just watched the review. But if there was a Calicat scene, it was during the Mead Hall sort of thing. They wouldn't have called it that. A bar back then. They'd refer to it as a bar at one point. I don't know if they would have referred to it that back then, or the writer as the bard either, because it's Greek, but it's fine. If the language is fine, it's if you did it in ancient Greek, it'd be really hard to follow. But yeah, so the story is the story of like Ithaca, the town of Ithaca, and there's the Trojan War. And basically, they're going to start so the Iliad is about the Trojan War. The Odyssey is about the return trip from the Trojan War. And I think there's a third one that was lost or something. Might be a third one. This is the middle, darker chapter of the saga, basically. And so you have it's a drama, it's a tragedy. I think it ends differently than the movie does. Just spoiler, it ends differently in the poem, but that's okay. I won't give that away. With Hollywood. But yeah, you have the Queen. A lot of flashbacks. That's kind of in the poem, a little bit. Narrative flashback. That's fine. They're complaining about the narrative flashback. That's fine because it's a narrative poem. It works. So that's fine. It hits all the right notes. It's all the right buttons to be a epic, classic Hollywood drama movie, Best Picture contender easily this year. Easily. Yes, 4 stars easily. So you have your adventure of in flashback and flash forward of this queen that's pining for her husband to return, and she is. There's all these suitors all over the place, and they're all scheming and conniving and evil. And there's this one guy, old guy with a dog, and it's the king's former dog. And there's when the king is able to shoot the arrow through the axes, which is kind of like pointed out by Red Letter Media. I will say where I will quote them again, just because. Oh yeah, that TSI CCI logo. They shoot. Although you think about that, if you shoot an arrow true enough, it will pass through, because it's going straight, right? Yeah, anybody could. So in the movie, what they did is they tweaked it a little bit so that the bow was strung a certain way that only the king would know how to fire it. No, but he knew how to fire it. So you could tell that's who he is at the end when he comes back. Yeah, but toward the end. So Odysseus is the king of Ithaca, and he's gone off on a sea voyage to go to fight the Trojan War, and they show some of that too. They show some of the Iliad in the Odyssey in the movie, They showed the Trojan War and the Trojan Horse and all that. So they kind of cover the two movies in flashback. The two story in 3 hours instead of breaking it up into two 90-minute movies. And they didn't do that. And they have, the king, he's gone off on the voyage, and everywhere they go on these different trials and tribulations. Very similar to Jason and the Argonauts and all that stuff. Similar to another classic story that one was in high school as well, Jason and the Argonauts. Yeah. That one too. Yeah, so in high school I also had to read V.C. Andrews, which was weird. It's odd, but at least I got to read a Stephen King book too, so that was fine. I could read some Stephen King books. He was in Misery and Christine and anyway. But yeah, I didn't do reports on those. I didn't do a report on V.C. Andrews. I did do a report on Othello. It's kind of a whimsical version of it. And also in junior college I was confused about Wuthering Heights because the Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats borrowed like 5 or 6 of the names from Wuthering Heights and stuck it in the cartoon. They kept mentioning the characters in this other play that we're doing in the class. It's like, oh, that sounds like Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats. And they're like, oh yeah, what? Literary teacher, Rose Higashi, points out, well, that cartoon was probably stealing the names from this classic. And here it is, we're going to do the classic now. Okay, it was kind of boring. Victorian era classics, yes. Much more interesting to read something like Little Women or Emma. Much more entertaining. If you're going to read your Victorian class. Anyway, back to Iliad and the Odyssey. Oh, the Odyssey movie. You have your. I'm not trying to prove that I'm literary. Well, I was an English major, and then it was journalism, English and journalism graduate. But yeah, long ago. Yeah. So, as you can probably tell. But yeah, there's So this is not one that I covered so it was new to it. So whenever they did a character who was apparently a little off, I didn't notice, and I think most of the audience didn't notice. I think they enjoyed it. There's clapping at the end, applause and stuff. Of course, immediately, 50 guys take off at the end to rush over to the restroom because it's 3 hours later. Yeah. I didn't have any tea beforehand. But yes, it's too long movie. No, it isn't really though. Just don't drink any tea beforehand. Get the tea afterward. So yeah, you have Odysseus' journey and all the weird creatures he meets. I like how they used practical effects. The CGI is minimal. I think they used props and people and costume and stuff like that. The armor is wrong for the time period. So late Roman armor, and so is the ship rigging, but that's fine. And actually, it's a little Batman-y looking helmets there on that one guy. Agamemnon's helmet. Does that look like the Batman helmet? but that's fine. His name is Bat Ears. I know it'd be the Batman. That's fine. But yeah, the Cyclops was an interesting interpretation. His face is just messed up. It's like an eye up there. It's just messed up. And they don't realize he's a god in disguise. He's Poseidon's son. All the Greek myth stuff. If you want to know all about the Greek myth, shout out to the John Solo channel. John Solo. Shout for he got all the Greek myths on there. Go look that up. I'm sure he'll do this one again. Yeah, he should do because of the movie. Everybody's doing the movie, so I'm doing a review of the movie. Roundabout. And so we have we have the journey. We have the Cyclops scene. They're trying to escape from the Cyclops' lair. You might compare that to the scene of them escaping from the trolls in Lord of the Rings later on. But where do you think Tolkien got that, and later Peter Jackson got that from Greek tragedies. Maybe not this one specifically, but one of them. A lot of the terms of the tragedies. One of them. Yeah, the escape's similar, but that's because it's like when Lord of the Rings movies came out and they compared like the mentor and mentee, like magician guy, Gandalf and Frodo thing to Luke and yeah, Ben Kenobi, and then Yoda. It was like that's a classic trope, and that was Lucas was aware of the Tolkien books and Dune and copied them. That's all, and in samurai movies, and that's a different topic. But he was aware. Also, Greek tragedy would do that. There would be like there's a character in this where the mentor kid they're doing drawing lots to go on the journey, and the mentor kid guy shows up and he gets the other lot and the other guy chickens out. He stays behind, but he gets the kid gets the lot instead of the other guy. The other guy stays behind, and that's how they trick that's how they reveal who the hero guy is. I don't want to give away everything, but there's a scene where they reveal that he's got the lot in his hand. He took it with him. I'm not sure how he kept hanging on to it for that long, but the hero guy has the lot. It's a little piece of wood or something. But sure, yeah. maybe it was in his butt, like in Pulp Fiction. And anyway, so and that's the scene that has Elliot Page in it. And no, unlike the trolls going, oh, he's running around shirtless. What are they talking about? He's wearing like an outfit. Nobody's running around. The shirtless guy is DiCaprio later on, or he loses his shirt. It's like, yeah, they probably CG'd the muscles. But yeah, they had to work out a lot of these things. DiCaprio loses his shirt at one point. No, that's the wrong guy. That's DiCaprio. Yeah, Elliot Page is the other guy. He's a little mousy guy that shows up, and he's like, I'm gonna take the lot and go on the mission with you, and then, my character's on screen for 6 minutes, maybe, on screen for 6 minutes. Same thing with Helen's character. It's on screen for maybe 10 minutes, so they shouldn't worry about that. But yes, it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly salvageable 6 minutes. I mean, supporting actor cameo, it's fine. You guys. You know what it is the right-wingers are still butthurt about Juno. 20 years ago, there's a movie called, I think almost 20 years, there's a movie called Juno, where another Page, Ellen Page, was in that one. Yeah, you can look that up. And she's in that one. She's playing a pregnant teenager. And in that movie, it's not fun, but the right-wingers are like freaking out like, oh my god, it glorifies a pregnant teenager, and it doesn't though. If they watch the movie, it was all over Fox News and everything. It's like, did they watch the movie? No, they obviously didn't, because it was a miserable drama. It was a good drama, but it was a drama. That's when they're putting her up for adoption and stuff. But yes, that was actually Paige. It's the same person. They came out and they became a man. So what? So what? Doesn't matter. On screen for like 6 minutes. Yeah, that's what it was. Same person, same actor. So he was in Inception. You didn't make a fuss then. Yeah, he had a bigger role in Inception, actually. I guess. It's fine. Like, people exist that are different than you. Wow. Mind blown. Okay. So here we have continuing on to the rest, the other 2 hours and 50 minutes of the movie, where you have back and forth between the suitors and the wife, and the son goes off on a journey to try and find Odysseus, his father. They're convinced that he's still alive, and they're telling stories about him running the Trojan War. They cut back to going to the Trojan War. They cut back to the Trojan horse scene. They drop this horse thing off. that they had a creative way of doing a different version of the Trojan horse that it probably didn't really look that horse-like. They made it look more horse-like in the story, but it was probably more like a big tank with a horse head on it, because that would have made more sense. Because then they could have rolled it into the city instead of putting it on logs and having it gallop into the city. If it was a big tank on the roller coaster, they yeah, go in there and it would have on the surf and it would have killed them. Yeah, that was kind of messed up, but yes, that worked. I think it worked visually. It worked. So yeah, just a little too it's fine. But yes, the Trojan horse. Yes, well, that seemed cool. And then they go into the city, and somehow there was what kind of looked like some confusion as to the editing of where the other army guys come from, but it's not, because they showed the rest of the scene later in the movie, and they fixed what could have been a plot hole, but it wasn't a plot hole. There was a fleet of ships, right? And the fleet of ships in the poem, and Odysseus was just one captain of one ship. And there was a fleet. There was Agamemnon's ship and a bunch of other ships. The Argonauts were probably there too. They were all there, and the ones in Odysseus's army, they go in the Trojan horse, and then they convinced the people at Troy in the story, even if it probably really didn't happen. It was just making it up. But Homer was making it up, not Plato. I said Plato. I meant Homer. Homer Simpson. Homer. Yes, that's where that comes from. And the Homeric, not Homo. Homer. See, they're confused. Homer and Homer. Anyway, so Homer and yeah, they went inside the Trojan horse. They were put out on the beach so the Trojans would pull this giant horse thing, with probably weighed over a ton because there were several men inside it, into the city. It had to be more of a wheeled creature, because otherwise they pushed it in with wheels, chariot wheels. They would have had to have big wheels. Yeah, that would make more sense. So. I don't know, but probably. So it had to have something to move it. It would be easier for them to take it into the city. Fictional anyway. Okay, but yes, the Trojan horse goes into the city. So those men that are in the Trojan horse are separate from the fleet that's outside. They're going to go in the city. So when they get in the city, they essentially slaughter the guards at the gate and open the gate doors, and then everyone else storms in. So yeah, so they weren't the only ones attacking Troy. The other ones were, not to be confused with Deanna Troy from Star Trek. Well, that's where the name comes from. Yes, and the accent is supposed to be Greek. Deanna Troy. They should have cast Deanna Troy. Marina Sirtis should have been in there somewhere. Yes, somebody got him. So after the Trojan horse thing, they go to the Cyclops Island, and then they fight the Cyclops, and then did they go to the giant one next? I think it's the giant one next. It's the giant one next, and they meet up with a giant child that runs up to them, and it's like really big, and it freaks out, and then of course the larger giants, Nephilim people apparently show up. These Nephilim guys, or they could be Canaanites. Either one. They're pre-biblical Canaanite guys. They show up, all in their armor, and they have a big fight on the beach, and a bunch die. And then they go on to and then they barely escape that. They go to another island where they meet a witch who has the power to transfigure you like a Scottish and Irish and Greek and other myths, turning them into, okay, so that the men are really hungry, and this witch lady, she transfixes the man while he's outside in the field shooting a deer and stuff. She transfigures the men into pigs, like transfigures them. I think they used some practical effects mixed in with makeup in there, so they might have used some CG a little bit there for that, some of that stuff. But it looked like generally it was makeup and stuff. That stuff. They might have done a little bit, but they tried not to. They tried to have major scenes in the movie They went to several locations, Iceland, Crete, went a bunch of places, and they filmed in practical places, practical ships, no tank. There wasn't a staged anywhere. There may have been some scenes for pickup scenes, but usually, no, they went places. They went to different interesting locations and filmed it. Sure, they had to add a little because it doesn't look like that anymore. So they had to add a little, but that's fine. It's trying to be an epic, and so you have your what is the next? Oh yeah, the witches turn them into pigs, and Odysseus goes and there's a word in my crew, and she basically is like, oh, they were pigs, basically. Oh, well, she doesn't give that away at first. She's trying to get him to eat one of them. So in the poem, he does. Eats some of his crewmate. Ew. Poem, he dies. That's how he gets grossed out. It's like, ew. Ew. Yeah, but yeah, in the movie, she turns them back into the crew so they can get going. Because he barters with her to turn it back. And then there's a let's see, there's a whirlpool scene and a kraken scene. Well, that's later though. Then they have to journey to Hades, and some of the other crew were killed on the long journey, including the kid with the lot from earlier. Young man. We also have his son is played by the guy who plays Spider-Man, Tom Holland, and his performance is rather, it's okay, but I understand they had to ADR everything, so okay. Hathaway plays behind the screen a lot of the time, just kind of an interesting twist. There is a love scene in the movie, however, she is wearing what appears to be a modern black sleeveless tank top, which I thought was odd. They didn't have those back then. Or it would have been like a chainmail thing. It would have been like burlap or something. Or maybe Greek cloth or something. It wouldn't be black. It would have been white. Maybe beige. Where'd she get black? Well, I guess she's a weaver, so maybe she invented the tank top. But okay, that's fine. She just didn't want to do a nude scene. So I don't want to do a nude scene. Put me in a tank top. That's fine. They could have put a Greek robe thing. They could have done something. They could have made it modest. But you get to see DiCaprio. You get to see DiCaprio's nips. So there you go, ladies or men. You get to see DiCaprio's nipples. Perky in the ocean at one point, sticking up like a bottle caps. No, sure. Anyway, but yeah, they turn into furry people, and you might think, oh, it's like that movie Animal Farm in the book, and that is a book that I read in high school. Animal Farm, like the classic one, in the '70s cartoon. Yeah, we did it, that Animal Farm. And yeah, the new movie sucks. Animal Farm, yeah. But there's a scene in which the pigs become people, and people become pigs in that one. They transform back and forth. Well, Orwell read the Odyssey, clearly. And he liked the transfiguration idea. So that's fine. That's what happens. This thing influenced a bunch of stuff. Heck, the name influenced the main protagonist, anti-hero father character in The Simpsons, a legendary cartoon that's been going on for over 40 years. So, it's like, Homer. It's Homer. The guy. So there you go. But yeah. But yeah. So yeah. You don't get to see those. It's not like in Oppenheimer when you can see Florence Pugh's, and this dreary scene, two dreary scenes in that movie where you're not turned on at all. You're like, ooh, this Cillian Murphy guy's creepy. He's making soliloquies about it become death, destroy your world. That movie was a little overlong and needed to, yeah. This one's not overlong like that other one. What's going on seems to matter in terms of the story. I think that Although, looking back on it, I think that Wicked 1 and 2 did not need to be Wicked 1 and 2. And it would have been better if it was just a 3-hour movie. And just chop it into, like, take out all the extra stuff, you add it to that one. It didn't need to be 4 hours. But this one does need to be 3 hours. The poem is long. But yes, this one I'll say yes. No, Christopher, you're doing this one right. So, just, yeah, now when they show this to the Oscars, make sure to show the exciting scene, So the old Oscar guys, because they always go for movies that are late fall movies, nothing earlier than late fall. It's usually that's the case. But if this movie makes $1 billion, it probably will. Then maybe they'll notice it. Maybe it'll still be playing in late fall. But yeah, I'm not sure I want to see the IMAX, fully IMAX version, just because it is 3 hours. I'll kill 3 hours. Do I want to do that? Disappear for 3 hours again? Too. I'm not sure if I want a second showing necessarily, but yeah, the okay, after they go to that island, they go to a whirlpool that's in there. After they go to Hades, some information is told them that I don't want to give away because it's part of the movie. So and they leave that area, and they've got an interpretation of Hades as sort of a desolate, zombie-filled landscape. Looks like Iceland. It probably is, as seen in a James Bond movie and in Star Wars the sequels. The area of Iceland on the beach where it's all volcanic. It's cool. That's Hades in there. Sure. Why not? Why not Iceland? Some of the newest ground on Earth is there from that volcano that blew up there. That's why it's desolate. It looked cool. The zombie people were cool. The people coming out of the ground and stuff. The practical CG was so practical. I'm sure there was some practical stuff going on. Well, obviously people didn't literally pop out of the ground. The same thing with the giant people. I think some of that giant people stuff was forced perspective. They were actually optically in the shot as the giant people ran toward them, and they did like an old school Gulliver's Travels thing. And I think what was going on is the foreground, background. It looked like they were sometimes they forced perspective, so they weren't really taller than them. They just looked like it. And when they wanted to make them taller than them, then it was. But yeah, they forced the perspective. It worked. And then you have they go to the whirlpool, and they're supposed to go either one way or the other. The crew's trying to mutiny and stuff. Go to the whirlpool. Encounter the Kraken, which is pulling them, sort of a Kraken-like, dragon-like thing that's pulling them out of the sky, into the sky. Like a dragon. Like something kaiju in this piece. It's like, yes, it's it's a kaiju. Very funny. Yes. See, back in Milpitas, they would have got that joke, but here they're like, what's that? Oh, it was a kraken. It was sort of a pseudo kraken dragon. and then there's actually those whirlpool things. They were mostly in the Mediterranean. They weren't in the Atlantic. The whirlpools are near the Strait of Gibraltar, and they actually still exist. The whirlpools come in, and it's where the Atlantic meets the ocean there. And they're actually real. Ships get trapped in them. I mean, not like in the movie, but they made it really big. But there were modern occurrences of ships finding the whirlpool out there. Like, oh, there's the whirlpool. Poseidon is after them. But yeah, so then they end up on the sun god's island. And they're not supposed to eat the cattle, but they do, and that dooms the last of the crew. Spoiler. It's in the poem. And then there's flashbacks and flash forwards to the 7 years that he's been on the island with Stephanie, I think. Guess who that is. And he's on the island. I'm sure the John Solo guy could explain that better. and he's on this island with this lady who's giving him lotus leaves and stuff. The audience did know what that reference was. And also so did Keats and Yeats and some of those poets later on. The Lotus Eaters was one of them. To read that poem in school, college, among other things, they mentioned this lotus plant that does stuff. They're the California equivalent is the poppy. Yeah, it's a drug reference. It totally is. The lotus there's like a lotus looking thing, and it's a poppy. They roll over Greece too, and in Asia as well. Yeah. Oh, the lotus plants go a lot of places. So Europe and Asia and stuff, and California, and yeah, because we're in a Mediterranean climate, at least in the Bay Area, so they grow there too. It's the California state flower. You're not supposed to pick it. Yes, if you eat too many poppy seed muffins and take a drug test, they'll think you have opium in your system, because that's what it is. It's opium. And apparently he's been on this island for 7 years, getting high as shit, tripping balls. He's been tripping balls on the island. And somebody in the audience figured that out, and they're like, there's some teenagers in there. And they're, oh, dude, you mean he was tripping balls? Yes, he was high as shit. Yeah, he was high. He's stoned. Dude, it's a drug movie. Duh. Clearly, Homer was aware of what it does. That's right about it. And saying, "Don't do this." Yeah. And I suppose they didn't like some of the message in it. Ooh. That the queen lady was like I want all these suitors to die or whatever. I want to be the dominant woman, but there's no dominant women in Greece in that time period. It's like well, sort of and sort of not. I mean, the Greeks had goddesses and gods as well, so it was more like, okay, the guys in power would be afraid of the Zeus guy, but the ladies in power would be afraid of Helen and those other ones, and Persephone and all those other gods. And you could be disguised as a god. I understand. So it's like, yeah, it was kind of democratic for its time. It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't. They weren't overstepping that as a message or anything. No, that character could say something like that. You know what she meant? She wanted the king to come back. Yeah, because the suitor. It wasn't that she was trying to be feminist. The suitors were assholes. You don't want any of them. They're all drinking and gluttony and stuff. She could have. The thing is, though, in ancient Greek times, she could have just had them all executed, which would have been funny. She said, "Oh, they're all traitors to the kingdom of Ithaca. Have them taken out and shot with arrows." Totally could have. Yeah, and they would have had to kill him. The Sea People Navy, like the part of the Sea People Navy thing that comes up in there. And so, yeah, they often try to compare the Sea People to the Vikings that came a little later, but they're not the same group. The Sea People were an earlier group. They were probably Medians, as they were. There was an island of Media and some other around and Italy and Sicily and stuff. They were probably technically those guys. And they were coming down to Africa and just attacking the coastline there. And in Greece as well, over there. So yeah, those are probably Medians. And actually Medea is one of the thought places that Plato, another guy, was thinking for Atlantis. It was just an island. It wasn't a continent. Which out of the Medians and the Sea People. He conflated them together. But no, not the Vikings. That's much, much later. The Vikings is much... The Vikings and the Norsemen and the Northmen are much later. And they're yeah. Yeah. That's different. That's completely different. That's more modern compared to this story. There's as much distance between them as there were between Plato and Homer. There's quite a lot, 1,000 years. Plato was writing about stuff that happened 1,000 years before he was around. So was Homer. In his time period, earlier. And like the Trojan War may have not actually had a Trojan horse. Nobody actually found any pieces of it. But that's where they get the term the ship of Odysseus from. It's the ship of Odysseus. So it's the Enterprise from the motion picture, like the ship of Odysseus, completely rebuilt. Yes, completely rebuilt. Almost a different ship, almost. But yes, the or the Titan was rebuilt into the Titan A, which became the Enterprise G. Yes, it was like the ship of Odysseus. Yeah, it's canon, sort of. But Kirk was Horatio Hornblower, so that would have been later. Different story. Interesting story. Yeah, Horatio Hornblower. Master and Commander is similar to that. Yeah. Have you seen that movie? It's Horatio Hornblower. Yeah. That's kind of what he was. Kind of. And then there's, the Vikings were later. The Vikings, there was a Norseman movie, which is, it's a good movie, but it does have one weird little flaw in it. They don't do the Viking helmets with horns because that would be wrong. The Viking show didn't do that. That was a guy later on called Wagner who decided to add the horns. Everybody wanted to do the Viking horns, so this is wrong. But there's one nitpick in it. There was a girl actor in the movie in the Norseman who was wearing braces on her teeth. They had to make this whole elaborate story about how Vikings had the teeth jewelry and stuff only in death. They wouldn't have been able to do that when they were in life. So yeah, the elaborate teeth braces on the girl to hide the fact that she's wearing braces. Why'd they give her like coverings or something? They could have given false coverings. Their teeth were all perfect anyway. Anyway, so yeah. But yeah, so yeah, the Odyssey story is going to go back to he's been on that island, the opium island, getting high. He's got to go home, and other ladies there. They keep complaining about the different actors being. Why? This is a Hollywood movie. Come on. It is kind of messed up that Helen of Troy's husband, or king guy in the story, kind of insults her. He says, "This is the face launched 1,000 ships." And he turns and says, "Well, maybe 600." He's actually insulting the actors right there. And they left it in the movie. It's like, okay, that's fucked up. That's messed up. Yeah, he should have had some. Story of her twin sister of Troy. How do they know what she was? I mean, they drew pictures of her thousands of years later in the Roman times. How do they know what she looked like? Yeah. I think she could be exotic. Why not? I mean, they drew her as a classical white, but they also in Roman times drew Jesus classical Roman alabaster white with a crown and looking like either a young Zeus or older Zeus when they wanted to be older bearded Jesus. And it's like that's not what he looked like. He was Jewish. He was from the Levant. He's from Galilee. He'd have olive complected skin, and he'd look. And a short beard, maybe a scrawny beard, and he'd have a big nose, and he'd have a little hat and stuff. It wouldn't look anything like the Roman pictures of Jesus, and that's 2,000 years ago. He would have looked he would look similar to that part of the world, Jewish part of the world, Israel. So the Romans rewriting Greek history in their image has been going on since they had that. So. I don't know what any of those people really looked like. The Romans re-stylized it in their own. And actually, that's the Renaissance in the 1500s. For some of those years, centuries later, another 1,500 years later, the Renaissance. And you had people like David's Michelangelo and all that stuff. And coming in there and making sculptures that are new in the 1500s that are not at all what they looked like. They made their own images and their own pictures that they thought everybody looked like. This is later on that they put them in their image. It's who knows what Helen of Troy looked like. I suspect she probably looked. I mean, probably not Ethiopian. She was probably more Egyptian. I guess she looked probably more like Cleopatra. Obviously not the classic 50s Cleopatra without 50s or 60s one with Elizabeth Taylor. Obviously not. fair-skinned and blue-eyed. No, no. Um, but maybe that was why. Maybe she looked like kind of exotic. Looked like a. Maybe she's even surly looking, and that's why she was exotic looking. It isn't just that bust that they have in the museum thing. That was later, way later. Yeah. Actually, that sunken city, I think they found that sunken city a couple of years ago, and the sunken port of Helen, the port here at Helen's Port. They could have some of those that stuff's from that far back, so they could have gone in there and said, okay, this is the statuary down there. This is probably what they kind of looked like, because it would be closer to what they actually looked like, closer to that time period. It's 2 hour and 53 minute movie. So, yes, go and see, roundabout, go and see The Odyssey. Another rendition of The Odyssey. It's definitely a Christopher Nolan movie, definitely his thing. A lot of his, okay. Come on. Okay, a lot of his sound design and things like that. The music and Foleying, because they had to use the cameras. That's fine. I didn't. There's really no. I mean, it's nitpicks, but you're watching a movie. At times, it was dull and gray because of where they were, and also I forgive them with some of the line of sight, because in this case it's an IMAX movie where you're supposed to be watching it on IMAX and you're watching it on D-Box or whatever it was, and they had to cut some edges of the screen and the top a little bit. So yeah, I can forgive them that, because then you're meant to see this movie with all of them out there. Well, he doesn't really screw up that bad. Not enough to be noticed. Yeah, there's another new one, Spider-Man. Just the new trailer dropped. Saw it. They showed it. And I'll just discuss that preview before I leave. In the Spider-Man No Way Home movie, the spell that Doctor Strange casts is to make everyone forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And then they open a can of worms, so they have to undo that in this one, with the Hulk shows up and helps them, and I was thinking they're going to undo that. All they had to do in the last movie was have him say, forget the reveal that he's Spider-Man. Forget that Jameson said it. That's all they needed to do. The rest of it could have stayed the same. That's all they needed to do with the spell. But it was a monkey's paw thing, so it didn't. But yeah, that's all they needed to do. Forget that Jameson said it. Not forget that he's Spider-Man, but forget that Jameson said it. And the world just forgets that Jameson said it. Then they're fine. That's all they needed to do. No. As a story writer, they could have got out of that so easily just by changing the wording of the spell. Yes, to quote Professor Snape. If you say this spell wrong, Potter, yes, J.K. Rowling will become an anti-trans bigot. But if you say it right, she won't. Oh no, you said it wrong. 2 points off of Gryffindor. I have no interest in the new show. I'm sure the actors are fine. I don't care if they recast Snape as a black dude. That's fine. I don't care. I'm just not going to watch it because it's J.K. Rowling. I'm not going to give her anything. Yeah, it's like after I went to see Fantastic Beasts 2, and my friend John said, Mark's card said, why? So he can make fun of it. Well, okay then. But yes, back in the day. That was after she became such a toxic character. So yes, and also, without skipping a beat, he said, well, that's why the sorting hat sorted you into Slytherin. So I call. Into Slytherin. Yes. The Odyssey. Go see The Odyssey. a million other people have so far.